A statement attributed to Princess Anne began circulating rapidly through British press offices and diplomatic circles. It stated that no private foundation formed after stepping back from royal duties is allowed to trade, either directly or indirectly, on the authority, symbolism, or privileges of the crown. Any confusion must be corrected. Any advantage taken will require explanation. Within minutes, Buckingham Palace formally confirmed the language. Then came the second blow, not through dramatic press leaks, but through paperwork. Royal investigators, working under a joint review authorized by Princess Anne and Prince William, had assembled a dossier into Harry and Meghan's Archewell Foundation. The review examined its finances, branding, and most controversially, the couple's recent overseas engagements. At the heart of the controversy was their January visit to Nigeria. At present, the Archewell Foundation is listed as non-compliant and prohibited from participating in registered activities such as fundraising or issuing charitable grants. The foundation failed to submit its required financial report due in January and had also not paid its renewal fee since February 2023. Charity Watch tax records released in December 2023 revealed that Archewell experienced an $11 million decline in donations in 2022 compared to the previous year. Rising costs were widely believed to be linked to the couple's royal-style international trips, including visits to Nigeria and Colombia. Princess Anne referenced figures from the U.S. Internal Revenue Service, showing that the Archewell Foundation faced unprecedented financial penalties in 2024, as donations and grants fell sharply. Reported expenses rose to $5.1 million, up from $3.3 million in 2023. Total donations dropped to $2.1 million, down from $5.73 million the year before, a 54% increase in operating costs. Only $125,000 was directed to charitable programs, while the remainder went toward operational spending. Salaries totaled approximately $913,000. Other expenses surged to $2.9 million from $1 million the previous. Net revenue after expenses stood at $2.5 million, compared to a $24 million surplus the year before. According to palace sources, Princess Anne personally flagged the Nigerian visit after officials there confirmed that Harry and Meghan had entered using diplomatic-grade facilitation privileges typically reserved for working members of the royal family. These included special visa processing, expedited airport access, secured accommodations, and military-escorted transfers. Yet at the time of the trip, Archewell was listed by California regulators as restricted from fundraising and grant, making due to an unpaid $200 renewal fee, a minor lapse that triggered far broader regulatory scrutiny. The contradiction was impossible to overlook. As one royal aide reportedly put it privately, how does a foundation barred from financial activity produce a tour that receives royal tier treatment, while its founders insist they are acting entirely independent of the crown? Princess Anne wanted answers. So did Prince William. Palace legal teams quietly checked internal royal compliance records against public filings from U.S. regulators in California and Florida, where Archewell's charitable status and financial disclosures were already under review. The overlap was troubling. Internal memoranda reportedly mirrored elements visible in American regulatory data: declining donations, rising operational costs, reduced staffing levels, and restructuring notices sent to employees warning that the charity could close in its current form. Anne's inquiry was not about whether Archewell could exist. It was about whether Harry and Meghan had blurred the boundary between private philanthropy and royal representation after formally stepping down from royal duties in 2020. In palace thinking, that boundary is inviolable. According to two senior officials briefed on the review, written clarification was demanded on which Nigerian ministries were contacted, who requested travel facilitation, whether British diplomatic staff were involved, whether royal titles were referenced in official correspondence, and whether Archewell communications suggested institutional royal backing. These were not branding concerns, one source said. They were constitutional ones. Prince William's involvement was intentional and measured. As Prince of Wales, he oversees multiple crown-linked charitable portfolios, environmental work through Earthshot, homelessness initiatives under Homewards, conservation partnerships via the Duchy of Cornwall, and dozens of patronages inherited from the late Queen. Royal aides emphasize that William's charities operate under strict governance frameworks, audited accounts, public trustees, board oversight, and clearly defined limits on royal participation. He is known to dedicate dozens of working days each year to a single initiative. The contrast, insiders say, was significant. Palace investigators reportedly observed that Harry and Meghan, while listed as unpaid principals of Archewell, declared in official filings that they devoted an average of just 1 hour per week to foundation work. Princess Anne drew attention to the figure not as ridicule, but as a serious question: could such limited involvement reasonably justify international travel conducted with ceremonial treatment normally reserved for official representatives of the sovereign? In a subsequent briefing, a single line echoed through Buckingham Palace corridors: "The Crown does not underwrite private ventures." Anne, long regarded as the monarchy's most uncompromising guardian of protocol, was said to be incensed that public uncertainty continued over whether Harry and Meghan were still acting on Britain's behalf overseas. She ordered officials to prepare formal letters demanding clear public statements that Archewell is not affiliated with the Crown, full disclosure of how travel privileges were requested, confirmation that no royal language, insignia, or implication had been used, an immediate correction of any promotional materials suggesting royal endorsement failure to comply, sources said could lead to further institutional distancing, potentially including limits on the use of royal titles in charitable branding. While the palace moved quietly, public reaction advanced at speed. Polling commissioned by 2 British newspapers in late January placed approval ratings for the Sussexes near 22%, while Princess Anne, rarely flashy but relentlessly disciplined, registered above 68%. Online discussion framed the dispute less as celebrity drama and more as a philosophical divide: tradition versus branding, stewardship versus self, promotion, service versus spectacle. A retired civil servant in London captured the mood in a quote that spread widely: "Anne shows up in the rain and stays all afternoon. That's what royal duty looks like." Palace sources emphasize that Anne's action is not a prosecution. It is a boundary. Investigators continue to assemble data. Coordination with American regulators remains ongoing, and financial reviews are still active. But the signal sent deliberately on the 29th of January was clear. The monarchy believes its image has been drawn too close to a private enterprise operating under regulatory scrutiny, and it wants that separation made unmistakable. As one courtier put it, Harry and Meghan may run a foundation, they may tour, they may fundraise, but they may not do so in the shadow of the crown. For the first time since their departure 6 years ago, the palace has chosen not to imply that distinction quietly. It has chosen to put it in writing. As scrutiny intensified around the Nigeria visit, royal investigators began following a more sobering trail, one shaped not by headlines, but by filings and financial records. What emerged was not criminal in a legal sense, but within palace tradition, it was viewed as more troubling: a misuse of moral currency. Public U.S. filings show that the Archewell Foundation, established by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in 2020, experienced a dramatic contraction in donations and activity between 2021 and 2023. In 2021, the foundation reported receiving more than $13 million in contributions. By 2022, donations had fallen to under $500,000, with only a small number of new gifts recorded. While some grants and salaries continued, operating expenses began to exceed income, pushing the organization into what insiders described as cost containment mode. One insider told the Daily Telegraph the walls were closing in. Everything was being restructured or frozen. Staff were told not to expect renewals. U.S. tax filings supported those claims. Quiet staff layoffs took place in early 2023. No major new initiatives were announced in 2024. The foundation also failed to submit key paperwork on time in California, leading to a temporary suspension of its legal ability to raise or distribute funds. That final lapse, a missed $200 renewal fee, triggered broader scrutiny both publicly and within the palace. To the royal institution, The contrast was stark. On one side, the Sussexes were traveling in a manner resembling working royals, visiting orphanages, meeting national leaders, and conducting highly visible engagements framed as humanitarian work. On the other, the foundation underpinning those activities was not compliant with basic regulatory standards. And crucially, that discrepancy was never clearly explained to the public. Although Archewell later reinstated its California charitable status, weeks afterward, the reputational damage had already set in. Royal officials reportedly sought transparency documents voluntarily from Archewell's UK partners, but encountered legal barriers, prolonged delays, or no response at all. This lack of transparency only intensified Princess Anne's concern that Harry and Meghan were using royal-style influence as a protective cloak rather than a standard to be upheld. Anne, who once insisted on sleeping in a converted shipping container during a disaster relief visit to avoid unnecessary attention, reportedly remarked in a private meeting, "Humanitarianism isn't something you put on when you travel. It's an account that must be balanced openly and with integrity." Her unease echoed growing internal worries that Archewell's public engagements were being used to imply legitimacy while financial disorder persisted behind the scenes. Prince William, more measured in tone but no less firm in conclusion, quietly reached the same point. Enough was enough. For years, the palace had maintained a delicate balance, allowing Harry and Meghan to live privately while tolerating periodic public confusion about whether their work carried royal endorsement. But Archewell had evolved beyond a name. It was now under scrutiny from us regulators and the Crown's own compliance bodies. No criminal allegations were involved, yet William believed the reputational risk to the monarchy was mounting. As one senior advisor put it, if people are being asked to donate, it matters whether they believe they're giving to something royal. And if that belief is false, the issue becomes misrepresentation. What had started as overdue paperwork escalated into something far more consequential, a reckoning between two competing visions of public service. The palace had drawn its boundary. The next response would have to come from Harry and Meghan. As internal reviews accelerated, another arena opened, not in legal filings or audit trails, but in public perception. Meghan Markle, long skilled at shaping media narratives, launched a subtle yet discernible effort to recast the debate. At its core was a carefully assembled mix of grievance, legacy assertion, and implied royal association. For a time, that blend confused donors, blurred affiliations, and threatened to erode the monarchy's moral footing. A major concern raised by palace aides and external regulators centered on language, marketing copy, digital biographies, event invitations, and promotional materials repeatedly described Meghan and Harry as royal founders, Duke and Duchess, or senior British figures, without clarifying that they no longer held active royal roles. At a Nigerian charity event in May 2025, one sponsor introduced them as global royals of the House of Windsor. Meghan reportedly delivered a keynote address before a backdrop featuring a stylized crown emblem. The phrasing, while not illegal, was deliberately suggestive. Princess Anne, known for her blunt assessments, was alarmed. "There are two kinds of confusion," she reportedly said. "The accidental kind and the manufactured kind. This is the latter." The palace ordered a linguistic audit comparing Archewell's public-facing materials with official royal communication standards. The findings were stark. More than 60% of reviewed content contained wording that an ordinary member of the public could reasonably interpret as indicating royal endorsement. It may not have violated statute, but it violated trust. Privately, royal staff began referring to Meghan's digital footprint as platforming the monarchy. An internal memo circulated among senior communications officials warned that her podcast relaunch, delayed since 2023, included royal history segments framed through a heavily editorial lens. A proposed documentary series was being pitched using behind-the-scenes footage from the couple's wedding and their time at Frogmore Cottage. Social media posts employed hashtags such as #RoyalImpact and #ModernMonarchy. Despite their formal exit from royal duties in 2020, supporters argued Meghan was simply acknowledging her past. Princess Anne disagreed. In an off-record remark relayed by a senior aide, She reportedly said, "You don't honor an institution while rejecting its rules. That's branding, not remembrance." Meanwhile, accounts from former Archewell staff based in both the US and the UK began to surface. Several ex-employees, speaking anonymously to investigative outlets, described internal strain and unclear directives. One former staffer recalled, "We were instructed to pitch initiatives as high-impact global royal work. But when we asked what that actually meant, there was no guidance at all." One former staffer described last-minute alterations made to events to give them a more official appearance, including the addition of diplomatic-style elements such as flag displays or military escorts. Some of these arrangements were coordinated through partner organizations that did not fully grasp the implications of the Sussexes' exit from royal duties. This gray area allowed Meghan and Harry to walk a narrow line of credibility, never explicitly claiming to represent the royal family, yet never clearly denying it either. Within palace walls, Prince William began raising the possibility of legal clarification around the use of royal titles in fundraising and promotional contexts. Fully removing the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles was widely viewed as politically fraught, but discussions explored guidelines that would prohibit their use in charitable or marketing materials without clear disclaimers. The intent was not punitive, it was protective. As one aide explained, the monarchy has rules because it carries responsibility. Once those rules become optional, everything they stand for becomes optional too. These conversations remained confidential, but insiders say the Wales household, particularly Catherine, supported the move quietly yet decisively, viewing it as essential to safeguarding both the institution and public trust. As the situation unfolded, the tone of British media shifted. Op-eds began appearing that were less scandal-driven and more openly fatigued. Commentators questioned how long the Sussexes could benefit from royal proximity while publicly distancing themselves from the family. Even some former supporters expressed unease at what they perceived as excessive brand expansion. A widely shared Times column summed it up bluntly. "You cannot reject the crown and wear its jewels in the same breath. The public sees the contradiction and the damage accumulates." In response, Buckingham Palace launched a restrained but deliberate media effort highlighting the steady work of active royals. Short-form documentaries showcased Princess Anne's decades-long commitment to save the children, Princess Catherine's leadership in early childhood development, and Prince Edward's engagements across the Commonwealth. The message was subtle but unmistakable. This is what sustained service looks like. The strategy proved effective. YouGov polling between August and October 2025 showed Princess Anne's approval rising from 57% to 74%. Catherine's trust rating reached 82%, the highest among senior royals. By contrast, Meghan and Harry's net favorability fell by 12 points in the UK and 7 points in Canada. What began as a financial issue had evolved into a reputational reckoning. For the royal family, it was time to reclaim the narrative. The turning point came on the morning of the 19th of January 2026, when Princess Anne appeared before the press at St. James's Palace. Flanked by legal counsel and the Archewell Foundation Fetogle's ethics chair, it was a rare, nearly unprecedented move for the Princess Royal to address internal family matters publicly. But silence, she concluded, was no longer viable. Calm but resolute, Anne stated, "The duty of the crown is to serve, not to brand, to protect, not to exploit." In that spirit of accountability, I can confirm that the royal household has completed a comprehensive investigation into the financial, ethical, and reputational implications surrounding the Archewell Foundation. She paused as cameras clicked, then continued. The investigation, she said, identified material overlap between funds raised under royal titles and their use in activities not aligned with public service. The impact was immediate. This was not merely a rebuke over accounting practices. It was an assertion that royal identity had been leveraged for personal influence. Anne added that several internal findings mirrored concerns raised independently by U.S. charitable compliance authorities, including undisclosed sponsorships, private jet usage billed under charitable initiatives, and an unclear boundary between Archewell Foundation and Archewell Productions. Though she did not name Meghan or Harry directly, The implication was unmistakable. Formal correspondence has been issued requesting correction, transparency, and the immediate cessation of any representation of royal endorsement, explicit or implied, unless formally approved through the Sovereign Grant Office, she said. Within 24 hours, Meghan Markle appeared via Zoom on a California-based women's leadership panel, framed by golden light and lush greenery. She did not address Anne's statements directly, but her message carried a defensive undertone. "When women rise, there will always be noise," she said. "But we rise regardless." She portrayed Archewell as a humanity, first movement subtly casting herself as a casualty of outdated institutions clinging to control. The audience responded with applause. Yet analysts quickly noted what was missing: no reference to royal titles, the Nigeria visit, or the finances under scrutiny. For many in Britain, that silence carried more weight than any direct denial. Princess Anne's statement sent ripples well beyond the UK, particularly across Commonwealth nations, where the monarchy still holds symbolic authority. Officials in Nigeria, Canada, and New Zealand issued measured remarks, reaffirming their commitment to transparency in any partnerships involving royal branding. A Nigerian cultural attaché told The Guardian, "We welcomed the Sussexes in good faith. If that trust was leveraged for marketing or influence, then clarity is owed." Back home, public debate shifted from scandal to standards. Commentators began asking fundamental questions: who truly speaks for the monarchy, what responsible royal representation entails, and where the boundary between personal branding and public duty should lie. Princess Anne concluded her address without rancor, but with composed conviction. "There are those who serve before cameras, and those who serve with calloused hands. We know the difference, and so does the public." That line, shared across millions of screens, became the unofficial mantra of the monarchy's new posture: calm, firm, and unafraid to draw lines. Public response followed swiftly. Online polling conducted the following week showed that 67% of Britons believed the royal family handled the matter with dignity and necessary resolve. 59% supported demands for financial transparency from Archewell. Only 18% felt Meghan and Harry were being unfairly targeted. The Crown, in short, had regained control of the narrative, not through outrage, but through evidence. The week after Anne's statement was not marked by retreat, but by reform. On the 22nd of January, 2026, Prince William convened a special session of the Archewell Foundation Council at Kensington Palace and introduced what has since been termed the Transparency Charter, a sweeping directive set to redefine how the monarchy engages with charitable work in the modern era. Designed to close loopholes exploited by figures like Meghan and Harry, the charter laid out 5 central principles: clarity of role. Anyone representing the Crown must hold written authorization, clearly defining official duties, geographic limits, and event-specific mandates. Ambiguous, soft royal visits would no longer be permitted. Financial audit trail. All funds raised under royal partnerships, whether through patronage events, charity galas, or fundraising platforms, must flow through regulated UK-based accounts and undergo biannual independent audits. Separation of brand and duty. Royal initiatives tied to media ventures such as documentaries, merchandise, or influencer appearances must disclose financial structures, contracts, and any commercial profits linked to royal association. Host nation protections. International visits conducted under any royal title must pass pre-visit compliance checks, including visa legitimacy, diplomatic boundaries, and certified activity itineraries. Digital accountability. Any online content using royal symbols, crests, or official imagery for public service representation must be reviewed by the Crown Communications Office. Standing at the podium beneath the Royal Foundation crest, Prince William declared, "Service is not a slogan, it is a standard. And from this day forward, anyone acting in the name of this family must meet that standard with full transparency." He was joined by Baroness Chalker, a longtime Commonwealth advisor, and Sir Nathaniel Havers, the Crown's senior auditor. Though Harry and Meghan were not named publicly, palace sources confirm that a personal letter was delivered to the couple within hours. It demanded comprehensive financial disclosure of all Archewell Foundation activities since inception, immediate suspension of branding, implying active royal endorsement, and legal clarification of the diplomatic and financial arrangements surrounding the Nigeria visit. A 14-day deadline was set. Within days, Meghan Markle's legal team responded with a preemptive filing in California, alleging public defamation, interference with charitable operations, and misrepresentation of private activity. Her attorneys argued that the royal household was engaging in deliberate reputational harm. The opening salvo stopped short of a lawsuit. No formal legal action was filed, but the document made its intent clear, if not to sue outright, then to cloud the field. At the same time, Meghan launched a calculated media counteroffensive, appearing at Oprah's Women in Leadership Summit, streamed worldwide on Apple television. Dressed in soft beige tones, her delivery was calm, controlled, yet pointed. "The world needs more compassion, not control," she said. "We've spent years building a platform rooted in empathy. No one gets to claim that spirit as their own." She made no reference to Nigeria, no acknowledgement of Archewell's finances, and no mention of the royal inquiry. Instead, she leaned heavily into emotional framing, steering the focus away from documentation and toward identity. As a woman of color navigating institutions designed to exclude, the speech trended instantly, but reactions split sharply. U.S. celebrity outlets praised her composure. British headlines were far less charitable, a royal brand or a rogue operation. The Telegraph, Archewell audit, what Meghan isn't saying. Daily Mail. William sets the standard. Meghan shifts the blame. The Times, if Meghan's response was emotional, William and Catherine's was structural. The Princess of Wales, known for quiet community engagement, visited 3 grassroots charities. During the week, the Transparency Charter was unveiled, organizations previously overshadowed by Archewell's headline, "Heavy Campaigns." There were no speeches, no staged photographs, no quotes. The message needed no narration. This was what sustained royal service looked like. Observers noted the evolution in the Wales's public posture. Fewer grand tours, less spectacle, more presence, less gloss, more gravity. A deliberate refusal to engage in points, scoring, or narrative warfare. Then came Abuja. The Nigerian Foreign Ministry issued a statement confirming that Harry and Meghan's May 2025 visit had not been coordinated through formal diplomatic channels and lacked authorization for the use of royal titles in any official capacity. The trip, it stated, was facilitated by a private organization with no legal authority to represent the British monarchy. "We are reviewing documentation to ensure all procedures were followed." The fallout was swift and damaging. The Foundation for African Girls Empowerment, FAGE, which had co-hosted Meghan's panel during the visit, released a statement saying it had been misled about the nature of the engagement and its connection to the royal family. Donors pulled out within hours. One Fortune 500 contributor reportedly froze a $2.2 million pledge pending the outcome of investigations. A YouGov survey on the 25th of January reflected a dramatic shift. 73% of UK respondents now believed Harry and Meghan should no longer use any royal titles, even socially. 81% backed William's Transparency Charter as essential to the monarchy's future. Meghan's UK favorability dropped to 41. Catherine's rose to plus 62. Whether the Sussexes would respond to the palace's 14-day demand remained uncertain, but the tone was unmistakable. The Crown was no longer reactive. It was procedural, forward, moving, and publicly prepared to sever ties. Historian Dr. Isabel Ronley wrote in The Atlantic, "This is not merely about ethics, it is about legacy." William and Anne are not defending an institution. They are reforging it in the heat of modern scandal. As the countdown ran out, the public waited. The deadline passed quietly. No response from Harry. No audit from Archewell. No apology. No retraction. Just silence. Intended to project dignity, but instead feeding speculation, the palace answered without commentary. That morning, the official royal website updated a single line under public duties and representation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are no longer authorized to engage in any activities under royal title or branding, domestically or internationally. That was all. With that update, the palace severed the final symbolic thread. All remaining license for Harry and Meghan to appear as working royals was withdrawn. Sources say the decision was unanimously supported by King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince William. Harry, now without formal privileges, faced a new reality. His ongoing visa challenges continued, this time without the protective fog of royal ambiguity stripped of titles. His standing in American political and legal circles diminished. For Meghan, the last tether connecting her brand to the crown snapped. Netflix quietly paused pre-production on her upcoming series, a historical drama centered on overlooked royal women, pending legal review of usage rights. As the Sussex chapter closed, Catherine appeared publicly at a children's hospice in Sussex, a choice rich in symbolism. No crown, no statement jewelry, just a simple silver pendant once worn by Queen Elizabeth. She listened. She smiled. She held the hands of terminally ill children. In the press gallery, no one asked about Meghan. They understood the moment. The monarchy had moved on. Polling conducted 2 days later showed overwhelming consensus. 87% of UK respondents supported the final severance. 68% said the palace had waited too long. Meghan's public trust rating fell below 20% outside entertainment circles. For years, Harry and Meghan had occupied a space between privilege and independence, sustained by ambiguity. That space no longer exists. They are now officially and symbolically outside the institution. In their absence, Princess Anne, William, Catherine, and Sophie have begun reshaping the monarchy around transparency, service, and restraint. The final act was not a courtroom battle or a dramatic press conference. It was a quiet removal from a website, from duty, from legacy, and that silence spoke louder than any scandal. It was not just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of a clean page.